Schefter, good morning.
Good morning, Andrew and John in Philadelphia. How are we doing today?
Beautiful day.
We're doing great. We've been reacting to the NFL draft, obviously, all week long. So let's start with the first round. The Philadelphia Eagles move up one spot to get Jihad Campbell, but there have been reports, and we would love to talk to you about it, that they tried moving up even higher in the draft. Do you know if that was for Campbell or if that was for somebody else?
That was for Jihad Campbell. That was the guy they wanted all along. They were in discussions to try to move up even higher. The deals fell through. At one point, they were talking with the Chargers. The deal didn't get processed in time, and the Eagles stayed diligent and kept working to try to get a deal done, and they wound up getting the same player that they were targeting all along at the spot that they did.
And any reason why he fell to 31? A lot of people had Campbell as a top 10 prospect in the NFL draft. Eagles get him at 31. What have been the things that you've heard about the fall in the first round for Jihad Campbell?
Well, he's recovering from surgery on one shoulder. There are teams that believe he's going to need surgery on his other shoulder after the season, and there are teams that believe that he has a knee issue over time, degenerative. Now, again, doesn't mean it is, doesn't mean it will happen. He is a great player. He's a top 10 talent. But when a top 10 talent falls to pick number 31, there are reasons. And if we're going to look for the reasons, it's his left shoulder, it's his right shoulder, and it's the condition of his knee. And we'll see over time how valid those medical concerns are or aren't.
Do you trust one team's medical staff to evaluate more than another's? Because I hear people say it's worth. I hear people say it's worth the risk, Adam. That it's worth the risk, or they can afford the risk. The Eagles can't afford. No team can afford to not have their number one pick come through in any year if you're trying to sustain greatness.
But, John, you got to understand where they're taking him, and you have to understand the risk that's involved. And they would not be taking him at all if they were overly concerned about medicals.
Good.
If the medicals were such a concern, they would never use the pick. Let me say this. The Eagles and other teams are very diligent and judicious in who they leave on their board and who they take off. The Eagles would never take some of these players that other teams have taken. And in this particular case, is the medical, is it a flag? Yes. Is it to the point where it's troubling enough that they took him off their board? No, it's not. So they thought it was a great value. They took him where they did, and we'll see how it goes.
The Eagles did not draft a tight end, something that we all expected to see. With that being the case, is Dallas Goedert going to remain a Philadelphia Eagle? Will they try to work out a contract with him, or do you think that they will still look for other options?
My guess is if you've been looking, you're going to continue to look. It's just that the best period usually to make a deal, if it's going to involve draft pick compensation, is before or during the draft. It didn't happen. There was only one veteran that was traded during the draft. That was quarterback Sam Howell. For all the other talk that there was about all these other players, there weren't very many player trades during the draft. And so now we enter into a period of late April, early May, and there's no real urgency to get anything done. But I think that it just remains an option and will continue to be an option, and they'll be monitoring that to see if anything can materialize.
The way the Eagles roster is set up, it's so amazing how you have all these defensive contracts that are going to come up in the next few years, but how he's such a master at planning for it. Is that do you think that is a situation that really these teams plan out 2-3 years in advance?
Oh yeah, at least. Oh no, they've and now look, you could plan for 2, 3, 4 years down the line. And all of a sudden, you get players that step in and emerge. You get players that step in and get hurt. You get players that step in from trades. There are all sorts of scenarios that change it. But, yes, it doesn't change your planning for the future and how you're approaching that and how you're proceeding. I mean, that's the idea. Is they could tell you roughly what their cap situation is going to be, what they hope their roster looks like 2 years, 3 years from now. And when they make a lot of these decisions, they know that they're going to have to or want to pay Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter and Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean and many of the great young players that they've selected in recent years. So that when they're more judicious about spending money in free agency, that enters into it. That's part of the decision.
Now, Schefter, there's a reason why when I brought you on, I mentioned how it was the second highest rated draft in terms of television.
I know where you're going with this.
What happened to Shedeur Sanders, who at one point was considered a first-round selection, a top-half first-round selection, and then he doesn't go till round 5? And obviously people continued to watch on day 3 because of the intrigue surrounding Shedeur Sanders. What happened?
Well, I think the networks owe a debt of gratitude to Shedeur Sanders for being on the board, because that is one of the primary reasons, the main reason that the draft was the second highest rated draft behind only the 2020 COVID draft, where everybody's inside and everybody's watching the draft because there's nothing else on. We watched all the shows that we could stream at that point in time. This was, I believe, a confluence of factors all coming together. You know, when I was talking to teams, I didn't find that many teams that really liked him a lot. I heard teams talk about Cam Ward, and there was general love there. I heard teams talk about Shedeur. I didn't hear that. And I know what you said, but everybody had him going around. Well, we still thought he was the second-rated quarterback, and we still thought he was going to go high, and we still thought all those things were in play, but they weren't. And it was a case where I think he was not viewed as highly by teams as the public perceived him to be. He did not have a good pre-draft interview process where, I believe from teams I've spoken to that he turned off any number of teams. And so, you've got those factors. You've got one of these things where sometimes the draft goes on and it just feels like people slip into an abyss and you just can't make it back. And it just starts getting away from them. They just start sliding, and it's like everybody just kind of moves on. It was very odd. It also felt personal at certain points. So that's what I'm saying. There weren't that many teams that needed a quarterback. The teams that needed a quarterback drafted a quarterback. It took away any need. It continued to slide. You factor in the draft process. It's a whole slew of factors like that enter in.
I was surprised at some of the storylines that were being trotted out there, though. It's almost as if there were a lot of ex-players and people who cover the league that were trying to make it out to be something that it wasn't. And racially motivated, to me, was the number one. It seems like there was a lot of mistakes made in the process. And what part did Deion Sanders play in that process, if you heard any part of that?
I don't know. I think that teams were aware that Deion looms in the background, but you know what? Deion's played the sport. He gets it. He knows how it works. I don't know. I'm sure that you're saying that, and I've heard it. I heard it
on the shows you work on. People trying to spin that and I'm going, what does this have to do with it? I've seen nothing but African-American quarterbacks be picked, African-American players be celebrated at the top of the draft over and over again. I mean, we don't even talk about African-American quarterbacks anymore. That's not an issue. We have one in this town who is one of the greatest and is one of the greatest leaders that an organization has had after being challenged to do so. I just think that there was a lot of deflection about not blaming the player and his father for creating the sideshow that maybe a lot of people didn't want a part of.
Well, I think there were people that didn't want to be a part of the sideshow. I think that's probably fair. But, again, that's not the way that I know Deion. I think of him in a different way. I would want to be connected, affiliated, and aligned with him. That's me, okay? But I've worked with him. I know him, admire and respect him. So I view this in a different light, and it's hard for me to see that way. Now, do I think that he made mistakes? Yeah. Do I think that they should have had an agent handling some of the stuff? Yeah. Do I think if they had an agent that Shedeur's name and number would not have been sent on the NFL directory to all teams on the Thursday of the draft to reach people? Players and their numbers are not listed on there ordinarily. But when you are self-represented, that happens. And that's how your number winds up in the hands of some idiot in college who's doing ridiculous things. So, I laugh at this. Like, I see some of these players, they don't want to hire an agent. I got it. Your contract's slotted. You're not hiring the agent to negotiate your contract. You're hiring the agent to help you navigate the pre-draft process. And if he charges you 1%, who cares? 1%. Like, people get so bent out of shape over ridiculous things. And agents are not brought in to we all could negotiate their first contract. It's
slotted.
simple.
It's slotted.
It's slotted. It's color by number. Okay, I got it. But what they do help with is, again, making sure that you don't make any mistakes in the pre-draft process. And agents are insurance against updates and scores.
It's the smoke. You didn't have ESPN the phone. You weren't with ESPN at the time.
Yeah, I remember.
I had one of those. I could have killed somebody with it. It was unbelievable.
Shefty, I got one last question for you, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot, and you may not even have an answer. But last year, after the NFL draft came to an end, you told us right away, look out for the Washington Commanders.
You did.
I'm curious, was there a team and their draft process where you will tell us today, look out for this team? It doesn't have to be NFC East, doesn't have to be NFC. Was there a team this weekend where you said, I like the things that they did, they got good stuff building, they're going to be the team that nobody's really talking about that much that's going to make a nice splash in the 2025 NFL season?
Yeah, I got one.
Oh, what do we got?
The New England Patriots.
Wow. So you're saying like they could make a jump to being back into respectability?
I'm saying that they're going to make a jump back into respectability, and they're going to compete for a playoff spot this year.
There you go.
Wow, all right.
There you go.
Last year it was the Commanders. This year, the New England Patriots.
Adam Schefter brought to you by Track Phone.
Yeah, Shefty, listen,
Thank
man.
you, Adam.
We appreciate it. Thank you for calling back, and we'll talk to you next week.
See you, buddy.
Yeah, next week,
Tuesday.
Guys,
Tuesday. Yep, Tuesday with Shefty.
It'll be Tuesday with Shefty. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you, guys.
All right, there he is.
Have a great week.
Adam
Thank you,
Schefter
buddy.
on the Comcast Biz Hotline, brought to